Have you ever gotten so frustrated with someone that it kind of led you to lashing out at them, and then at the end of the moment you realized, oh no, I actually don't know if they're going to forgive me for that one? Have you ever found yourself in this place? My husband and I found ourselves in a similar place a few weeks ago. So on Sunday mornings, my husband and I made this deal that I would drive his truck to and from church on Sundays. We live right behind Bayside Folsom. It's a 60-second drive. But something you should know about this driving deal is that it's actually in place for me to learn to drive stick shift. My husband's been teaching me to drive our stick shift truck for about 3 years now, and I have yet to drive alone, and I have yet to not stall out every single time I drive the truck. And so our deal was, you drive there and you drive back. It's 60 seconds, maybe less, and it'll just be a way for you to get better at driving stick shift. And so I said yes to the deal. I was like, I want to get better at this. And so the first Sunday we do it, I drive to church, everything's a breeze, and I feel so confident that I can perfectly drive us home just 60 seconds around the corner from Bayside Folsom. Well, we get to the stoplight right before our house, and I am the first one in line ready to go when the light turns green. So the light turns green and I stall out. So I turn the car off, turn it back on, try to go again. I stall. Lines of cars are piling up behind me. I'm starting to get really stressed out. I turn the car off, turn it back on, I stall again. And this keeps happening about 5 or 6 times. And as I'm trying to figure out how to drive this car and turn it on, I just keep saying, I can't do it, I can't do it. And my voice is getting louder and louder and louder until I realize I'm starting to yell, and I think I'm yelling at my husband. And at some point, I finally figure out just that right level of sensitivity and push with first gear, and I get us onto our house. And when we get home, my husband and I are silent. Have you ever been in that place with your spouse where you're just both silent with each other, and it's awkward and it's tense and you don't really know who's going to speak first? And so my husband and I walk into the house. I walk to our back bedroom. He goes to the kitchen, and I'm in our back bedroom just feeling so upset with myself. Upset that, one, I can't drive stick, but worse, I just yelled at my husband. That my husband the entire time was so kind and so calm with me, and yet I got mad and I yelled, and he was just trying to teach me to drive the truck. And so I walk back out into the kitchen, fully ready to apologize for raising my voice. And I walk up to the kitchen table. He has a plate of food in his hands, and he puts it right down in front of me. And I said, "What's this?" And he said, "I made you lunch." And I said, "What do you mean you made me lunch?" He said, "Yeah, I made you lunch." And I asked him the question. I said, "Aren't you mad at me? I just yelled at you in the car." And he said, "I knew you weren't really yelling at me. You were just trying to drive stick, and driving stick shift is really frustrating. Everybody gets mad learning to drive stick." And I said, "So you're not mad at me?" And he said, "No, absolutely not." And he said, "In fact, I think you're hungry, and so I made you some lunch." And when I tell you this story, I broke down in tears. That my husband in that moment, when I thought maybe he might not forgive me for getting so upset over driving a truck, but he was so gentle and kind with me. That I expected him to be tense towards me back, but instead he was kind, he was gentle, he made me what I needed in that moment. And I almost wonder if sometimes when we make a mistake in our own lives, when we sin, when we fall into own patterns we know are not good for us, I wonder if we sometimes find ourselves in this feeling of, man, I don't know if I can approach God about this because he might not forgive me. That I messed up way too bad this time. I don't know if God's going to forgive me for that one. And I almost wonder if we need to shift our perspective on how God's going to be when we approach him to ask for forgiveness. There's this verse in Matthew 11:29. It says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." You see, the God that we approach when we need forgiveness, he's not a God that's going to get angry and put his fist down and look at us like, dang, you did something bad again. But in fact, he's actually the God that meets us right where we're at. That he meets with us and he says, "I am gentle and I am humble. I am kind and I am loving. Sure, you made a mistake, but I still love you. I am yours and you are mine." You see, when we approach God asking for forgiveness, although sometimes we can feel hesitant of, man, is he really going to give it to us this time? He will. That's who he is. You see, that day when I got frustrated driving stick and my husband made me lunch, I felt like I got this beautiful picture of, man, this is what God's really like. that when we are not our best selves, when we find ourselves feeling the worst of the worst or doing the worst of the worst, he is gentle with us. He is kind. His yoke is not heavy, but it's light. And when we come to him, he says, hey, my love, my forgiveness, and my grace is for you. Now let me show you the way. And so I wonder today, for those of you listening to this Devo this morning, that maybe there's something you've been holding back from God because you're still questioning, man, I don't know if he can forgive me for that one. And I want to challenge you today to start talking to God. And I hope you will find that he'll meet you right where you're at, offering you forgiveness and grace just like you need, just like my husband gave me lunch that day. May God be with you today.